The death of a woman has always resulted from a specific part of the human body, a rich and peculiar ritual that involves a drug capable of granting someone health, intelligence, power, and even superhuman abilities. Do you believe it? Today's movie, The Ritual Killer, tells the bizarre story of a man being pursued by police officer Luke, who was hunting a serial killer with anti-blues in an abandoned alley in the streets of Rome. Unfortunately, he arrived too late. The blueprints were already pulled out, leaving only the bodies of the victims on the floor. The victim's body was the sole object on the ground, surrounded by ritual artifacts as if some mysterious ceremonies were being performed. Late that night, Landau Cold reappeared. Luke and his colleagues split up to chase after him, but Landau Cold was too skilled a runner. Luke pursued him for a long time before finally catching up. You can see that Landau Cold is tall and strong, with knives and scars covering his upper body. After a few blows, Luke was knocked to the ground. Just as Randall Cave stole a knife and was about to kill Luke, one of Luke's colleagues arrived. However, instead of capturing Randall Cave, the colleague was killed by a knife. But before he could strike, more policemen arrived, forcing Randall Cave to flee. Luke got up to pursue him, but this time, Randall Cave vanished into thin air. Luke searched desperately but could only see glimpses of him and ultimately had to call off the police. The story then moves to a small town in Mississippi, USA. On this day, a policeman named Uncle was sweeping up a vice ring with a colleague. It was supposed to be an ordinary operation, but he was stunned to find that one of the prostitutes looked exactly like his deceased daughter. This discovery enraged him, and although the prostitute didn't realize how furious he was, she kept talking to him, only to be shot dead by him. The old man's mind was already tangled, and he frequently had visions of his daughter beckoning to him, making it clear that his psychological issues were severe. The next day, his superiors questioned him about the shooting of the prostitute, and the old man defended himself by saying that she had wanted to be killed. His eldest daughter, Maria, sided with him. Randall Cave came to America in search of his master and his prey, driven by the allure of this limitless drug. He soon found a new employer, Farner. Farner was an older man with many ambitions, and the two quickly struck a deal. Randall Cave began searching for his youngest target, a bright young girl who was his favorite, a girl of just 14 or 15 years old. The scene resembled several altars, and there was a spell written in fresh blood on the wall. Unfortunately, none of the policemen could read it, so they were instructed to film the spell for further study. Back at the police station, the forensic pathologist informed them that the victim had his throat slit and his heart removed. Just like the other victims found in the Mississippi River, the boy's hands had been severed, but this time the police didn't leave empty-handed. They discovered a type of black tea at the scene, a kind of black tea from Central Africa. Speaking of Africa, the old man recalled that there was a professor in town from Africa, Professor Mackles, who was knowledgeable, intelligent, and prudent. The old man thought Professor Mackles might know something about it, so he immediately went to visit him. As soon as they met, the old man presented the chest of black tea he had found at the crime scene. When Mackles smelled the tea, he was shocked and surprised, as if he had uncovered something significant. Yet he did not reveal his thoughts. Mackles quickly composed himself, returned the tea, and asked the old man where the red crosses had come from. The old man explained they were found at the murder scene and showed him a snapshot taken by a colleague. Mackles remained unperturbed, claiming he didn't know anything about it. Despite Mackles' calm demeanor, the old man couldn't shake the feeling that he knew more than he was letting on. The next day, undeterred, the old man approached Mackles again for assistance. After repeated requests, Mackles finally agreed to help. The two men then went to the warehouse where the boy was killed. Mackles explained to the old man that the marks on the walls were acts of territorial marking, a way of gaining strength and power. The killings the old man was investigating were the work of a doctor named Sangama, who harvested parts of the body to make a drug called fart, which he either consumed himself or sold to his clients for an exorbitant price. People who consumed the drug believed it could not only strengthen them but also grant them everything they desired. Each body part had a different function. The genitals could bring good luck, the eyes could grant vision, and the brain represented power. To make this drug, the body parts had to be harvested while the victim was still alive. Those who made the drug believed that the more tragic the victim's life was, the more potent the drug would be, which was why the first two victims died such horrific deaths. In the end, Mackles revealed that the first two victims were part of Ugly's attempts to strengthen himself, and that the next victims were intended to be sold as drugs to his customers. This meant the upcoming victims would face even worse abuse. Meanwhile, on the other side, Farner, the buyer, began issuing orders to Ugly, who recorded the requests as if he were handling a shipment of goods. Upon receiving the orders, Ugly quickly set off in his car to hunt for his next target. This time he focused on a girl named Terry Randolph, a member of a family known as 98. His sights were now firmly set on Terry Randolph. He went up to talk to Terry, who was young, pretty, and full of wisdom, hoping that Randoku could find some satisfaction in his madness. At that moment, the police, who were patrolling the streets, spotted Randoku's car, the same one that had been seen near the murder scenes. The police wanted to question him about the raincoat sluices, suspecting they had uncovered something significant. However, one of them turned around and was killed by the man they had come to question. The murderer was a tall, strong black man with a scarred face named Randall Cave. The old man realized that the witch doctor he had been chasing was actually Randall Cave. The police used these physical descriptions to investigate the neighborhood. A witness claimed to have seen Randall Cave several times in an abandoned building nearby. The old man immediately led his colleagues to the airplane building, but Randall Cave was ready to take advantage of the situation. The police and Randoku began a deadly game of cat and mouse inside the building. Despite the police outnumbering him, Randoku had an unintentional magical spell that made him incredibly agile. Deep inside the building, the ghost wounded several officers. It was only when he saw Randoku's trousers fleeing and heard the shouts of the injured officers that he realized Maria, who had been his partner, had been killed, her throat slit. The next day he invited Professor McAllister to the abandoned building, hoping McAllister might discover something. McAllister told him about a custom in his hometown where, if a man injured another, the murderer would be forced to sever his own body parts and give them to the victim in apology, restoring the victim to life. A terrifying experience for the old man. The next day, when he received the report of Candy's disappearance, he had a strong intuition to split up with McCoy to see if they could uncover any missing clues. McCoy found nothing, but Bert came across a newspaper article about Farner, one of the wealthiest men in town. For Bert, the most important thing now was to catch the murderer, and even though he was starting to hallucinate about his dead daughter, he didn't have time to focus on anything else. Thanks to their efforts, Bert and McCoy discovered some new clues. They also found out that they were staying at the Ulland Roadhouse, which was where they were also residing. Additionally, they came across a photo of a police officer named Luke, in a place where Randaku had been living. This Luke was the same officer from Doma who had been chasing Randaku at the beginning of the movie. Luke informed them that Randaku had been convicted in Europe of killing 2 children and several police officers. However, the breakthrough came when Luke realized that Randaku's client was the wealthy Fina. Even though Luke couldn't find any concrete evidence, the old man was determined to take action. The next morning, the old man rushed to Fina's house. He had no evidence, but that didn't stop him from threatening Fina to stop his harmful actions. The old man's behavior inadvertently provoked Fina. Meanwhile, Professor McAllister was also being threatened by Randaku, who warned him not to assist the police anymore. Randaku then shifted his focus to his new target, Fina. This time, Randaku went to the powerhouse to select a young girl. He set his sights on the energetic Katie, who was Sister Fina's daughter. Pretending to be a friend of Katie's parents, he managed to engage Katie in conversation and eventually lured her back to his place. The next day, the old man was alerted by the police about Katie's disappearance, and his intuition told him something was wrong. Here's the corrected paragraph with proper English pronunciation, Uncle. This is Fina and Randoku. Professor McAllister suggests that a quiet environment near a water source is needed for the ritual, and that Fina's property is a good place to start. Bo quickly finds a barn that meets the requirements. Anxious to find one, Bo immediately takes Max to the barn, where they both go, but it's late. Bo leaves Max in the car and goes into the barn, where of course he finds Randoku. Randoku has Katie strapped to a rack, surrounded by several articles of furniture. He is whispering incantations and waving a dagger in his hand, while Katie is already crying out of fear. Lobo raises his gun and demands that Randoku surrender his weapon at once. Randoku obediently drops the dagger, but before Lobo can arrest him, Fina appears and knocks Lobo unconscious. With the loss of Randall's trousers, the little man passed through the wind and strangled Mackles by the neck. Suddenly Mackles stabbed Randaku, then slowly hid himself away from Katie. Unfortunately, he didn't manage to take Katie down. Eventually Katie fainted from the shock, and with a quick turn of the mirror, a large number of police officers rushed to the warehouse. By this time Katie had been saved by Sussing's uncle, but the whereabouts of Randall and Mackles were nowhere to be found, except for the corpse of Franklin, discovered in a dark alley in the middle of the street. Falaz told him that he had recently learned Randall Cousins had attended one of McAllister's speeches, and that the two men had met several times after the speeches, all before they had arrived in the United States. Now the most pressing matter was to visit Maria, the partner who had been slashed by a pair of cut-off trousers. Maria's hospital room was empty, and the doctor informed him that an old man had come by yesterday to pray for her, and had mentioned something about a wooden drawer. A wooden drawer. Soon after the old man left, Maria recovered, and was transferred to the general ward. At this point, the old man could not have been more astonished by McAllister's claim that a wooden object made from human body parts, fashioned into medicine, could actually cure anything. He took his daughter to the water's edge. Weary and exhausted, he fell asleep on the lawn, but then Dee Dee's wires malfunctioned, and she fell into the water. By the time he found her, Dee Dee had drowned. His wife was devastated by the loss, and soon after she took her own life. This became a recurring nightmare for him, one that he could not escape, and it was the very reason he now suffered from a mental disorder. The next morning he continued to pay his respects to his wife and daughter. With the disappearance of the blue pants, the little wise man was left to live alone in the wind. A long time ago I received an unnamed package in Luke, Rome. On the same day, Bo also received a package, which contained only a note and a small box. The note was left by Max, and I only caught a few of his words. He mentioned the witch's coat, the blue trunks of the clock, and inside the small box was a pair of human eyeglasses, which by no stretch of the imagination were the eyes of a man. The blue trunks made it easy to guess that these eyes belonged to Randall. Then comes the most shocking scene in the entire movie. The old man takes the glasses, places them in his mouth, and slowly chews them with a complex expression. The movie ends here, revealing that what was thought to be phlegm-free witchcraft actually holds mysterious powers. The movie concludes with the old man eating the eyeballs, possibly because he had witnessed Maria use the wooden ladder to come back to life, and he himself was desperate to cure his mental illness this way. Or maybe he was trying to gain some kind of psychic powers. The film doesn't give us an answer. What do you think of this suspenseful movie? Leave your thoughts in the comments section.